Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine and the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. Fabulous to see both of you. So as ever, let's check out the front pages, shall we, for the papers. And a desperate plea from the sinking migrant boat is on the front of the Eye, as those on board cried, "Please help us," before 4 died and dozens were rescued from freezing waters. That story also on the front of the Times, their headline, "4 dead after migrant dinghy sinks in Channel." And the Sun also covers this terror at sea with a harrowing image of struggling survivors. The Mirror tells nurses, "We are with you," a pledge they say is from the decent people of Britain as they prepare to go on strike across most of the country tomorrow. Give nurses a deal, says the Daily Express. They ask to stop this madness as fears for the well-being of patients persists. Daily Telegraph fears the damage of nurses' strikes will only get worse. While the Daily Star jokes, "Tough luck, kid," as postal strikes will likely leave Christmas gifts undelivered. The Metro leads with the tragic story of Zara Alina, their headline, just on her walk home after her killer received a 38-year sentence for his predatory crimes. On the front of The Guardian, a scathing report condemning the police for victim blaming in rape cases. And the Federal Reserve's half-point rate rise takes the front of the Financial Times, a shift likely to set the tone internationally, with the Bank of England poised to follow tomorrow. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Kevin and to Sarah. Welcome to both of you on another tragic day for the English Channel. Kevin, there's the Eye. Please help us. A desperate plea from a sinking migrant boat. And, you know, thank goodness for those people that a fishing crew is nearby.
No, absolutely. The trawler, which rescued a large number of them, more than 40, according to the Eye. Other papers have different figures. The FT, for instance, 31. But that harrowing call at 2 a.m. to a charity, and the tape of it seems to have been passed to several newspapers, and a man saying, "Please help us, water's coming in, we've got a family on board, there's a child heard crying in the background." It just brings the fact this is a human tragedy. And it's absolutely awful, and we'll all, our hearts will go out to them. But what do you do about it, and how do we stop the sailings? And who were these people coming to start a new life in Britain? Could there have been a safe and legal route for them in, which doesn't exist now? And look, it's always difficult in these circumstances. But I thought when the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, called them invaders, were these people invaders? The 4 people she regretted dying, did she think they were invaders? I suspect not. I don't think her heart is that cold. But this will keep on happening unless there are safe and legal routes, which wouldn't just solve the problem, but a large number, mustn't forget, of people who do finally get to Britain on these boats, take away Albanians, although they've been approved so far. But I accept that's a safe country, NATO member. But the others often fleeing persecution elsewhere, and they're given permission to stay in Britain because they have legal claims. It's almost as if the government is using the Channel as a moat to try and stop people getting into Britain to lodge those claims. So as the Sun say, they're paying £5,000. They call it a ticket to death. And we're giving the business to the traffickers because we're not allowing a legal and safe way into Britain.
Well, there's the Times, Sarah, as well, a close-up there of the footage that was taken with the sunken dinghy. You can see the people in water inside that dinghy. And Ray Strachan, the skipper of that fishing vessel, said it was like a war film. He spoke to our correspondent Jason Farrell about it. But it is amazing how sympathetic politicians suddenly sound on days like this. The government's policy is largely based on deterrent. And there it is, those pictures, watching people drown in the English Channel.
Yes, I mean, obviously, you look at that dinghy and you just think it's like a little slipper. I mean, you wouldn't go paddling in it. I mean, of course, the people who are really responsible for this tragedy are the people traffickers, are the people who are taking £5,000 per head to put all those people in that inflatable. The government's attempts to deter people from coming haven't succeeded. It's, the difficulty is that coming from France is not a country that is considered to be a dangerous place, and therefore they don't have automatic refugee status. I don't understand why the government can't do some sort of deal with France to process them on the other side. I don't understand why they have to be processed when they're fished out of the sea like this. It just seems, I mean, I know it's not ideal and I know they shouldn't be coming, but they are coming. So at that point, you have to have some kind of pragmatic policy. And it would just be good if we could perhaps process them in a place that isn't, the middle of the channel in freezing cold temperatures.
Well, I mean, that's long been mooted, hasn't it, that idea of processing on French soil. But a joint statement tonight with the French, Suella Braverman issuing it, saying that this is a stark reminder of the urgent need to destroy the business model of people smugglers. But then giving some figures, Kevin, as well. We have prevented 30,000 crossings so far this year, and with other European partners and Europol made more than 500 arrests since 2020. Also talking about the closer joint working, the embedding of officers on both sides, the greater tech patrolling of French beaches. Do you think the government's getting a grip on it? Perhaps politically, you may not agree with their tone, but do you think they're actually trying to do something about it? And should they?
Well, they are, but they haven't set up a system in France to handle claims. Because under the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, you can travel through other countries to the country you're going to seek a safe haven in. So they're allowed to do this. We used to be in the European Union, of course, and then there was the Dublin Convention, which meant that it could be returned to the country from which you'd come from within the European Union, but we're not in that anymore. No, I think she's right. Got to destroy the business model of the people traffickers, and you can partly do that by cracking down them, arresting them, imprisoning them, seizing their assets, getting the boats, destroying them. However, again, if you're not allowing people who will, once they get into Britain, be entitled to stay, if you're not going to allow them a legal and safe way in, you are creating and fueling that business model. That's the bit she doesn't get, because I think she just doesn't want them to come in at all. She wants to lock everybody out. And
yes,
again,
well, interestingly, there was a line from Rishi Sunak yesterday about that. The only way to come to the UK for asylum, he said, will be through safe and legal routes, specific to certain nations, as we know, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Hong Kong. But he did say, as we get a grip of illegal migration, we will create more of these routes with an annual quota in numbers set by Parliament. So perhaps that is a slight change of tone from the government in the future. Very quickly, Kevin, I want to move on.
Yeah, I want to see the numbers. Where are they? Until you have them, you will have people attempting to come across the channel, risking their lives, paying the smugglers, and very sadly died. Was it a year ago? 27 died. That's 4 now. That's 31 people have died.
OK. Well, also on the front page of the Times, which we saw there, is the news about the nursing union lining up the prospect of longer walkouts. Certainly, the head of the Royal College of Nursing told us this evening that the strikes may well go into January, which takes us to the Daily Mirror. You cared for us when we needed it most. Now, the decent people of Britain say to our nurses, we are with you. But, Sarah, people are scared about this, aren't they?
Yes, I think it's interesting, though, because I think there's a lot more sympathy for nurses than for almost any other sector of people striking. I think that people genuinely feel that nurses are underpaid. And if you look at the numbers, they are pretty much underpaid. And of course, they don't get any, they work extraordinarily long hours and very difficult circumstances. And I think they are, I think the Mirror's actually struck a note there, because I do think people really sympathise with nurses. I mean, whenever I've had any interaction with the NHS, whether it's been me or my children, the nurses have always just been amazing. And you just think, gosh, they just do such an incredible job, and they just do get paid very little. So I think that, I mean, I know that sympathy is waning for other sectors that are on strike, but I think as far as the nurses are concerned, I think people do have a lot of sympathy, and I think that hopefully they'll be able to get, I mean, if I were the government, I think I would just give them a bit of a deal and just help them out, really.
To what level? I mean, we saw in Scotland there was a deal, wasn't there? 7.5 more if you're on the lower bands, I know. So, Sarah, what is the right price, if I can put it that way?
I don't really know, but I said to Kevin last week, actually, we were talking about this, and I said I would just give them 8% and just, hope that would, get them some way towards what they want. I mean, I know that, that is below the inflation rate, but I mean, I think, everybody else is having the same problem, but I just think they just need some sort of quite, generous gesture.
Yeah, I know. I'd be happy for Sarah to do the negotiations. But if those trade unions and the Royal College of Nursing, which is holding the first strike in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland of this nature in its history, more than 100 years, but if it's settled in Scotland for 7.5%, a bit more for lower pay workers, you could see that is where you do the deal elsewhere. And if you look at the Express is probably the most faithful mouthpiece of Downing Street and cheerleader for the Conservative Party. They're saying give nurses a deal and stop this madness. And they point to a poll, and Sarah touched on it, public support for nurses, polling that 52% to 27% back the nurses. And this is where I think the government is going to lose. And Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, is playing this very, very bad by not getting into talks about pay. And if he had earlier in the week, this strike wouldn't be happening tomorrow. It wouldn't be happening.
OK, we'll see what happens, whether the government comes back to the table, or the employers, as they like to say. And just quickly, I'm going to run through the Daily Star. It was on the front, I think it was the Telegraph last night, actually, the fact that foxes are crawling all over abandoned Royal Mail postal sachets because, well, who knows what's in those gifts, possibly in there. Maybe some food. Oh, Sarah needs to cough. I'm going to do this story very quickly because we're running over.
Sorry.
Anyway, tough luck, kid. Your presents have been eaten by foxes. And obviously many, many businesses impacted by the strikes underway in both Royal Mail and the railways as well. But we move on. We've got lots to pack into the next part of our programme. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me once again, the Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine and the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. Welcome back to both of you. And just a simply awful story on the front page of the Metro, Sarah. Just on her walk home, the case of Zara Alina and the man who murdered her, who was a predatory prowler that night, as we heard in live television sentencing today.
I know this story is horrendous because he tried to get 2 other women that they know of that night. So that's what he went out to do. He went out to get a girl. And you just think, the amount of times my daughter walks around London on her own, there, but for the grace of God, it's just horrific. I don't understand this. I don't understand how somebody can be like that. It's just so weird. These men who are, you tend to not believe that they exist, but look at him. He does exist. 38 years he's got. I don't know that that's quite enough, to be honest. I don't think he should ever be let out again.
Well, we move to The Guardian, Sarah, just quickly on a related matter. This is a report on how police tackle rape. The Guardian suggesting it's exposed persistent failings in the criminal justice system, including a failure to track repeat suspects, explicit victim blaming, which is their headline, and botched investigations, none of which will give comfort to those women, as you say, trying to get home of an evening.
No, because also, the men like that, they've probably tried to do something like that before. So it's very important when women make reports that you do try and join up the dots and see if there is any correlation between, previous incidents. I think, you should be innocent until proven guilty. Absolutely. But I also think that, you need to take women seriously because, the idea that you would be victim blamed automatically will put people off reporting things. And it's only by women report, even if a woman reports an incident that didn't maybe lead to a rape, but that was a sort of, a case of someone stalking them or following them home, that could be significant because we saw with this guy, with Zara's killer, he tried it with 2 other women, failed, and finally got her. So if one of those other women had called the police and said, look, some weirdo followed me around the place into a grocery store and then followed me home, and they just went, oh well, she's obviously just making it up. Do you see what I mean? I mean, there are times when these things are important, so it is quite important for the police to be open-minded about such things. And of course there are cases where women report rape when it's not true, but I think most of the time, especially if they end up having to go to the office to the station and make a report, they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because something's actually happened.
OK, you've got 10 seconds on the FT. Interest rates, Kevin?
Yeah, the US Fed's put them up by 0.5% instead of the 0.75% recently. Bank of England, European Central Bank expected to follow. Interest rates are going to go up. People are going to really feel the squeeze, going to hit their living standards again. You're going to have higher mortgage costs, but they may not go as high as was feared when the Conservatives under Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng crashed the economy.
Yes, and inflation falling, still in double figures, of course, as we found out today. Both of you, thank you so much. Sarah Vine and Kevin Maguire, thank you.